I am Alexis Holt. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Partnerships for the NAAAHR Atlanta chapter. I'm really excited because this month is our sponsor spotlight series, and we are doing this month's meeting in partnership with PNC Bank. And I'm really excited about this conversation because it's the kickoff to our monthly Lunch and Learn networking series for engaging our allies. Part one today is mentorship, creating leaders, and loyalty. So I'm going to move forward and introduce our panelists that would be speaking today. First up, we have Denise Wright, who is Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion Advisor for PNC Financial Services. Denise Wright is a D&I advisor who partners with all levels of PNC leadership to integrate the work of diversity, inclusion, and equality throughout the organization. Denise also manages the efforts of the Corporate Diversity Council and D&I line of business councils. In her role, she focuses on growing programs and initiatives to strengthen employee engagement, development, and retention of talent, and sustain inclusion within the corporate culture. Denise possesses 13 years experience within D&I organizations, such as Diversity MBA, to share industry best practices to blend business conversations with inclusive diversity imperatives essential to impacting business results. Denise also has a BS degree from Penn State University. Our next speaker is NAAAHR's very own Dr. Shelton Goode. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer for Icarus Consulting. It is a veteran-owned firm that helps companies build a diverse workforce and create an inclusive workplace. Dr. Goode has over 20 years experience in HR and D&I, and he has held executive positions in several global companies. He has earned the reputation for being a strategic yet results-oriented leader whose expertise includes talent management, change management, and executive coaching. Dr. Goode was actually the first person awarded the Roosevelt Thomas Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Forbes magazine recently selected him as one of the top 10 D&I Trailblazers in the country. That's pretty awesome because we have our own celebrity among us. So that's pretty awesome. Congrats on that, Dr. Goode. Dr. Goode has also published several books. One of the most recent books, which I know got a lot of hype going around it, which was Winter in America, the impact of the 2016 presidential election on diversity in companies, communities, and the country. And Dr. Goode has received his doctorate from the University of Alabama and his master's degree in human resources from Troy University. Dr. Shelton Goode, everyone. And our next speaker, who is from PNC Bank as well, our next panelist is Chris Bergeron. He is the Vice President, Senior Talent Manager and Career Development for PNC Bank. Chris serves as a leader in the HR Talent Strategy organization at PNC. His team assists employees in identifying career development tools and resources across multiple areas of HR. He also has been a member of the HR D&I Council for the past 3 years. Prior to joining the bank in 2017, Chris consulted financial services organizations as part of the People Advisory Services Group at EY. He has also led implementation and customer support departments for several HR technology providers. Chris is a resident of Sandy Springs, Georgia. And our final panelist, last but not least, another NAAAHR Atlanta own, Cherie Knowles. She is a graduate of the University of Dayton. She is a talented executive with over 25 years of HR leadership and project management experience. She is the founder of not one, but two human resources, human capital, and talent management firms, HR Knowledge Source, and also Capital Consulting. Prior to founding HRKS and H3C, Cherie held several highly visible senior level HR positions, for companies with regional and national geographic footprints, including VP of HR for a billion-dollar professional services firm. She is an accomplished practitioner who has achieved multiple certifications and designations throughout her career, including EQI 2.0, SPHR, CPM, MBTI, and also DISC. She created a program called Link to Startup for Micro Businesses and has authored an Entrepreneur's Workbook for Professionals. Cherie has been a featured presenter at multiple small business expos, HR Star conferences, SHRM Atlanta conferences, NAAAHR conferences, Disrupt HR, and the Project Management Institute, as well as on radio and TV, and she was recently featured in Voyage ATL magazine. I remember when I first joined the organization, Cherie did an amazing presentation on civility in the workplace. So definitely see Cherie if you're looking to host any type of event around that. So right now, everyone, I just want to thank you and let's welcome our panelists.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for unmuting me. Good afternoon, everyone. As Alexa said, my name is Cherie Knowles, and I am truly honored to be here to be part of this relevant and very timely discussion. I'm equally as honored to be here amongst my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Goode, Denise, and Chris from PNC. We are experiencing, I think we all could probably agree, an unanticipated and truly an unprecedented time right now. There's no script for it. There's no playbook. And so we are navigating it as we go. And now more than ever, I think that the idea of mentorship and allyship are desperately needed in our workplaces. So I want to unpack this with our colleagues and really draw from their wisdom of knowledge. So to help us set the tone, I'm going to just go from colleague to colleague. I want to ask a question. When you think about the words mentorship and allyship, just tell us, what does that mean to each of you? So Chris, I'd like to start with you.
Well, first, thank you, Ms. Knowles. This is Chris Bergeron. Just wanted to start off by saying thank you for the opportunity to co-sponsor the session. I wish everybody good health during these challenging times. We really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be part of the panel here at the Atlanta chapter for the NAAAHR, and having the opportunity to continue the relationship that we've been involved in for a number of years. Mentorship and allyship, I mean, I think they are very much related topics. When I think of mentorship, I feel very fortunate to have had a number of individuals over the course of my career who really invested the time and energy to help me understand the field that I'm in, to be able to help me think about what opportunities would be. I had a mentor in college who actually took the step of helping to fund me to do a study abroad program. And the one thing that he asked when I did this is that I think about paying this forward to someone else as I go through my career. I feel like I've had some great examples of mentors. It's given me a way of thinking about being a mentor to others. I've had a number of different individuals across, over the last number of years who I've had the opportunity to mentor, both formally and informally, individuals at different points in their career, individuals of different backgrounds and of different races. And I've tried to take on the same approach of investing the time, sharing what I know, and helping them to achieve what they're looking to achieve. And I can honestly say that I've gained just as much from each of those experiences. Again, I think being an ally is a similar concept in my mind. When I think about that in relation to my work, I see that as really being about being able to get to know individuals that I work with, get to know individuals that are not of the same background, that don't look like me, and going and taking the extra step to really understand what their interests are, what they're looking to achieve, being able to be in the room and be able to speak out and tell their stories, to give them, to do what I can do to make sure that they are included in the conversation whenever possible. It's interesting that I think the concepts are very similar, and I feel like, like many individuals, I'm continuing to learn and trying to understand what the best way is to do it.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate that. Denise, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Excited to be here this evening. Thanks for having us today. We are, for me personally, I'll just start and I'll kind of get into a lot of the work with mentoring and allyship. A lot of the line of business councils are connected to these topics. They're so important today. For me personally, and I think all of us have had a coach, a friend, someone who advised us and impacted our life personally. And for me, that's really where mentoring sits for me personally, is really about connecting and forming relationships that have made that significant impact, and to help me continue to learn and continue to grow. When I think about allyship, I think about a way that I support others that may not look like me, that may not have the same background, but really how do I connect with them to lift them up, to provide them with an opportunity and more so a voice to be heard, so that they have a spotlight to accomplish what they want to achieve and that they can continue to learn and grow. I think about both mentoring and allyship as having an authentic relationship, a relationship of genuinely interest, trust, and well-being. There's, similarities between mentorship and allyship, but my role at PNC of managing the line of business councils, there's a lot more focus to help create that allyship spirit, so that we can continue to build and retain talent and help others to grow. So I think there are some similarities between the two, and we'll talk a little bit about what we do from a mentoring standpoint. We have a robust mentoring program that's docked into our employee business resource groups, and very well, there's a strong participation in that group. But these two are very relevant. I think it's important that we dig in and have some dialogue about allyship and mentoring. I'm excited to share some of the ways that we embrace these concepts and throughout our culture and throughout the lines of business. So that's when I think about those are some of the things that come to my mind.
I think that's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that. Dr. Goode, welcome.
Marie, how are you?
Hi.
I haven't seen you for a while. I miss you.
I miss you.
It's good to see you again. Thank you for this question. Let me start off by saying, if it wasn't for mentorship, the Shelton Goode that's sitting here today and sharing would not be here. I give 100% credit to Ronnie Bates, Ann Kaiser, Alan Bellinger, Frank McCloskey, and I can go on and on. I mean, those people are still a part of me. I give credit to my brother Leon, who's not here, who on a number of occasions, even though I was his mentor, he mentored me. That's the kind of relationship we had. When I think about mentoring, I think about three things. Number one, vulnerability. Number two, authenticity. And number three, reciprocity. And if you're gonna mentor someone, you should be vulnerable and be prepared for them to mentor you. the only way to do that, you got to be authentic. You got to be comfortable with yourself. You got to be comfortable in your skin. You got to be prepared to share. You have to be prepared to say, I don't have all the answers. Let's just talk about it and let's see if we can't work it out together. And then reciprocity. If you're going to mentor, you should create a relationship where that person not only feels comfortable, but feels obligated. They come up to you like Leon used to do every time I would get on the stage at an NAAAHR meeting. He says, Doc, I love you, but make it a little shorter. Make it a little shorter. He was always saying that. I miss him. I miss him so much. But I can remember probably some of the best mentoring I ever got was after I did not get a promotion to VP that I thought I had earned and deserved. And the person who, the hiring manager didn't give me the feedback. My mentor did. He said, let me do it. I have the relationship. And he says, Doc, let me tell you why I didn't get the job. He says, you have 2 Achilles heels. You have 2 blind spots. Number 1, you overpromise. Number 2, you underdeliver. Man, I'm went into a ball for about a week. But he called me. He says, okay. He dusted me off. He says, okay, let's get you ready for the next opportunity. And when that next opportunity came, I was ready. I wouldn't be the person I am without mentoring, but you've got to be vulnerable. I benefited from people's vulnerability. I try to pay that forward by being authentic and then reciprocate. And I think if Leon was here, he would say, keep it shorter, Doc, keep it shorter. So.
Thank you. I think you hit on something that's really key for all of us is the vulnerability, being able to be open to receive feedback from a mentor, because it's not just about always patting you on the back. It's about having real, truthful, honest conversations, and to Denise's point, built upon trust and relationship. Cedric, you were also a panel, so welcome. Would you mind just giving us a brief introduction? And I'd like to dive in with you to really talk about PNC's mentorship program, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for everyone that was involved for creating this space to talk about something I feel like is very important. I hope you do too as well, which is mentoring. But Cedric Young, I'm a regional manager here at PNC Bank for our Atlanta East region. Also, I do that by day, but by night sometimes and during the day, I'm also the Multicultural EBRG Employee Business Resource Group mentoring chair here in Atlanta. So, and for me, I guess, just to piggyback on what everyone else just said, mentoring means to me really is that, for me, it's just the ultimate way to make a difference, right? I think we are pretty privileged at PNC, particularly the line of business that I work in, which is the retail bank. We get a chance to make a difference, each and every day with every customer interaction. We deal with something that is very prevalent even during these times, because we all know that health and finance kind of go hand in hand. And so I think we're pretty privileged where we have a good landscape of people who are wired that way, that they're looking to make a difference. And this mentoring program just allows them a really good framework to be able to do so. But outside of that, it's really just another way to pay it forward. I think somebody mentioned it too as well. But to me, it means connections and exposure, right? I think through the mentoring program that we have here, we have an opportunity to create many different levels of connections between people in different lines of businesses, senior leaders versus those who are just coming on board, what have you. I mean, the whole spectrum is really covered through our mentoring program, and it's really centered through a D&I perspective, because in order to get involved, you have to be a part of one of our employee business resource groups, which is really driven our D&I initiatives that we're really looking to accomplish as a bank. So that connections and exposures really is really what makes the biggest difference in what I've seen in helping team members matriculate through and up an organization. So just the mentoring program overall, I can kind of give everyone just a real landscape and then maybe just talk about, what we've done here in the Atlanta area. But the mentoring program mission is the diversity and inclusion program is to really provide pathways to development and growth professionally and personally. Also, we look to establish new workplace relationships and really impact engagement, which is going to impact retention. And, you also get those, promotion and advancement opportunities as, you get that talent identified. So through those connections, through that exposure, it really comes to life. And I got a couple of examples I can kind of really highlight too as well. I'm also going to try to keep it short. That's ringing a bell in my mind right now as I'm going to take that advice. But the program really is designed to assist employees and, again, navigating through the company, creating those opportunities for discussed career and development. And we continue to see significant impact through growth and development of our employees who participate in the D&I mentoring program. During my time as the chair, some of the examples that I can kind of think of off the top of my head here are, specifically through attracting and retaining new talent. I think that's important since we have, a lot of human resource audience here. I think we all know that that's a key if you're going to, have a sustainable business. How do you attract, how do you retain talent, particularly during those first, that onboarding experience and really getting, team members connected. So I can remember an example of being a chair and having an opportunity to experience a new team member coming within 90 days within the bank, within joining PNC. They joined the EBRG group here, participated in the 2019 mentoring program as a mentee. They were paired with senior leaders. So just imagine being, not, can't even spell PNC, but you're already, in front of senior leaders, don't know where everything is, and having someone in addition to that support group that we already have in place to be able to help you navigate things. So they received that additional support, and fast forward 14 months, this team member was considered and actually awarded a promotional opportunity. And I truly feel like the mentoring program and that participation, that investment that the senior leader made really truly made a difference. Another example is more through the lens of retaining employees. I have an example that as a mentor chair that I can remember that team member was with the bank more than 5 years, so more a tenured team member, already a member of the EBRG, participated in last year's mentoring program. Again, partnered with a senior leader and really started talking through development plans. I think we've all been at that crossroad when you're really trying to figure out what's next, but not necessarily being able to have that authentic, vulnerable conversation with your direct manager. And but the exposure to those conversations and exposure to that individual being, having conversations with leaders in other lines of businesses. Fast forward as a result, now that team member is working in a different line of business and seeing tremendous value. So, and there are other additional resources. One thing I'll highlight last year, our capstone event, which was a brainchild of Anika McFarlane, our multicultural EBRG president here. Our capstone event last year was a speed networking event where we brought in, we had participation from senior leaders across different lines of businesses. We brought in participants, and those participants had 7 to 10 minute windows to really kind of take the conversation wherever they wanted to go with those senior leaders. And all of that really, I think, kind of ties back to a connection to people, a connection to the company. I think connections are even more important in this virtual space that we're living in right now, but also that exposure to different lines of businesses, information that you would just not have unless you really had a chance to sit down and, go through that journey with someone. So that's kind of some of the things that we've been doing here in the Atlanta area and kind of overview of the program overall, but very robust and something that is enterprise-wide which is very unique for our organization. I think is a true differentiator for PNC.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like you've been able to make it part of the fabric of the company, right? Part of the culture. And I know a lot of us in HR have thought about or started mentoring programs, and so it's really good to hear you are further along than some of us, right? And so how well it's received and how it's having an impact throughout a variety of places within the organization. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Chris, you had mentioned something earlier about informal and formal mentoring programs and just mentorship in general. Tell us a little bit just about your experience through informal mentorship. So I know you've got this amazing program, but we're curious just to know informally how mentorship has impacted your career over time.
It's interesting because I think especially right now where we are so, you know, we're in our home offices doing our work, looking for ways to connect. Being able to touch base with individuals, to have conversations about you know their areas of interest, things that they're looking to do, and to really drop your guard and to be able to talk openly. I'm finding I'm doing more and more of that across a broader range of topics. I think back to mentors that I've had, and when I was coming up in my career, I don't think I ever officially had the mentor. It was never sort of described up front as being a mentor. It was sort of something after the fact. I realized that someone had really invested their time in me, in my career. I don't even think I appreciated it at the time, you know, like you sort of look back, and I'm finding right now I'm having an opportunity to, you know, now that we are sort of in this time by ourselves, to reach out to some of these individuals who took an interest in my career and tried to pass something along. I've had that as a you know, someone who's had others invest in me in terms of being a mentor. I've had individuals, you know, reach out to me also during this time, and just in some cases, just be able to share some things that they're going through and, you know, interests that they have, just being able to strike up a conversation. Again, it's not necessarily falling under the umbrella of formal mentoring, but it's being able to take advantage of the moment. It's being able to have an authentic conversation. I've also just been I've just been accepted into this year's round of formal mentoring. So I'm also starting to go through those same steps with another individual in the bank and start to kind of go through our process. So it's something that for me, I'm having the opportunity to do it on a couple different levels. And I find it tremendously rewarding. I mean, in our, you know, being in HR, I think that's, you know, we sort of show an interest in people and being able to help people in their careers. And this is a great way to do that in a, you know, a very real way.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's great. I want to kind of shift a little bit the conversation. I'm going to come back to mentorship, but I want to shift us into the concept around diversity and equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging, and all of the things that help the organization not only attract people, but to keep them and help them show up to be their best. Dr. Goode, I'm going to toss this one over to you, my friend. You are by far the thought leader in this space, and I'm curious to know just your thoughts about how, let's go way back when to now, what have you seen in terms of DEI and changes, especially as we've moved forward into this century?
Okay, so wow, so this to the century. Are you implying I was in the previous century?
I thought you might catch that.
Yeah, I caught it. You know, I know you too well. So let me again, trying to keep my comments concise. Let me see if I can answer your question by giving you two pieces. Number one, talking about it in general, but then I don't think we toot our own horn enough in NAAAHR, which is a organization specifically dedicated to bridge that gap between diversity, equity, and inclusion, and human resource development and mentoring. It is so, I don't think we talk about it enough. So let me talk about where we've been, where we are, where we're going. I've been in this for a little while, as you've known. And I can remember when the field first started. It started initially in response to, well, let's say it didn't start, but it really got its first big push because of a lot of lawsuits. I know this for a fact, I was at a company that was on the other end of a class action lawsuit. So a lot of the efforts were around compliance and around litigation avoidance. That was what it was before. Then we started moving away from the number counting and then trying to make sure that people count. And we started talking about inclusion, making sure that people felt connected, respected, engaged. We wanted to make sure that they felt belonged. So people started partly running away from the word diversity because they were increasingly uncomfortable with it. And people became more comfortable with this concept of inclusion. So a lot of effort around what are we doing to make sure that everyone comes to work, goes home at the end of the day, feeling valued, respected, connected. But, and that's pretty much where we are now. And now we're shifting. We're in a movement. And the biggest change was all of those efforts I just described were internally focused. I would remember working at 4 corporations where even as a D&I, Doc, we can't talk about race, religion, you know, this. Those days are gone, folks. All 69 people on this call, if you're at a corporation, if you're a senior leader, you need to prepare for a workforce that's going to be returning. That genie is out the bottle. People always talked about those things. So now what you have to do is create a constructive way, a productive way for them to talk about it. To tell people not to talk about it, it's not only not good business sense, it's almost criminal to not create a safe space for people to talk about it. So as we move forward, talking about things like equity and justice, these are not internal things. Companies now are going to have to say, we can't ignore what's happened outside the front door. For years, if it stop it at the front door, no, you want to be all yourself, well, you can't be it up in here. It stops at the door. Those things are changing. But this is not new for NAAAHR. We've been telling people this for a decade. We are the quintessential organization that has been that group mentoring, that safe space. Our brand has been, from the time you come to our first meeting, we are family. We don't give you a handshake, we give you a hug. And we're that place where you can come and share and know that we're going to treat you with dignity and respect, not regardless of your diversity, but because of your diversity. And it has been the place for the young Black HR professional to come and be developed. You want to know about the unwritten rules? You better go sit and talk to Dr. Goode and let him tell you about how you navigate through the things that people don't tell you about. People, let's talk about the HR men of triumphant. Not only did we have a big organization, but we narrowed it down and we said Black men in the field are leaving because they're not being successful. They're not being able to navigate. So what did NAAAHR did? We created an affinity group right within an affinity group. Nobody does this better than us. Nobody talks about this topic better than us. So for organizations out there, support your local your local National Association of African Americans in Human Resources. If you don't have a mentoring program, then invest in a organization that excels at it better than anybody else. I'm dropping the mic. I'm through.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Denise, as an inclusion leader at PNC, tell us how your company has approached DEI and where you see just some impact that you're having. So tell us a little bit about what PNC is doing around that.
Yes, thank you. It's a tough act to follow, I will say. A couple points. I know Cedric talked about mentoring too, but we're unique at PNC where there are informal mentoring programs Chris shared that happen continuously, but within D&I on a corporate level, the mentoring program falls under the employee business resource groups. And it was intentional in that design. Our employee business resource groups is one of 3 strategic pillars of the organization. So you'll look at EBRGs, you'll look at line of business councils, and then we also have regional councils that foster mentoring and allyship that sit within our 42 plus markets right now today. Those 3 pillars interconnect. And what we found at PNC is that placing the mentoring program into the largest pillar, which is our EBRGs, which over 30% of our employees are part of, that really gets a lot of participation. And because our employees are docked into the EBRG, we get this natural lift of participation. And interestingly enough, when COVID started and we went into a digital climate, what we've noticed is that the need to connect and the need to, especially for those that are extrovert, it was very challenging for those to be in a remote digital environment. So what we found is we came up with programs to support the connection and the mentoring strategies that we have in place. So we saw a tremendous growth when we started a new cohort at PNC with the mentoring program because of the pandemic, because the need of us as human beings to be able to connect in some capacity. And so that connection with the EBRGs has really helped us to further strengthen that sense of belonging and that sense of contribution on our differences, and allowing people to come to work to feel valued and to feel like they have a purpose and they are making a purpose. In terms of how that connects to lines of business or regional councils, it does connect. A lot of the lines of business councils, and I did want to mention that they work with our EBRG. So you can be sitting on council, but be an EBRG. So there's a lot more of a unified communication that's going on. We get an increased amount of participation that's happening. And what the line of business councils do is they kind of take it a step further, and they're kind of the liaisons to respective businesses. So they communicate and cascade the mentoring program. They talk about EBRGs. So if you have a person in the market that doesn't know, is not connected to an EBRG or a council, but really want to be an ally for what's going on in the country today, the line of business councils help to share that communication. They help to kind of, cascade communication and make the connections to bring the awareness of these programs to businesses. So we get kind of a residual impact of increasing the program. Hey, become part of an EBRG. Here's what an EBRG does. It's very grassroots. Here's what our council's working on. We're helping to, talk about why diversity, inclusion, and equity matter right now today, why it's important. So the lines of business councils kind of intersect with the EBRGs, and they really help to create that stronger level of awareness. And they also, informally, I wanted to mention, do a tremendous job of tailoring what's needed in their respective lines of business and where they are in that journey, because everyone is at a different journey. We all are. But the businesses, councils really look to identify a program. So if it's wanting to support the awareness of diversity, the awareness of inclusion, talking about equity, they design programs and conversations. And they do this in a lot of really creative ways. Even our HR line of business council will offer something called Real Talk, where they bring in and they talk about relevant diversity and inclusion topics. They bring in leaders to talk about mentoring. And that's really where you get that personalization, the share your stories. You know, they have an authentic conversation about key topics and how all of diversity, inclusion, and equity connect and how it impacts all of us. So there's so much exciting programs and intersections that we do at PNC. For us, we constantly, it's a value it's part of our 7 values. It's a part of, you know, our organization, threaded through the fabric of who we are. And we are continuing to leverage our journey, and through the strong framework that we have and through our partners, we have been able to really advance and connect and have conversations about what's going on in the country, because we have a really solid program with grassroots EBRGs and line of business cultures, line of business councils, which really look to help enhance that culture. So a lot of good intersections that help to further strengthen the work of how we value our differences and how that really helps us to be the best we can be and impact the organization and our communities.
That's great. One of the words that you used that stood out to me is journey. So I'm hearing that, and I don't know if I hear reverb too, so I apologize for it. See if I can change it. A journey signifies to me always constantly growing and moving and learning as you go, right? So never getting to the top of the DEI pinnacle and saying, done, check the box, we're finished. And so I love that, and it resonated with me. Where, I know it didn't start out perfectly, right? And it didn't start out as intricate as it is right now. So can you share just maybe 1 or 2 of the learnings along the way, or any barriers that you've faced as an organization, or anything that you're still trying to push that rock up the hill in terms of getting buy-in and getting people to participate?
It has been a journey, and the evolution of PNC, of diversity and inclusion, has been an evolution. We have a strong history of D&I. We started with employee business resource groups over 10 years ago. Now we have 90 chapters. A large group of the organization is connected into an EBRG. We also have 15 lines of business councils, including our retail organization, which makes up a large majority of our population. The growth of these programs has really been able to take off, because we see D&I as the value of the organization, as I mentioned. And it wasn't until 2018 when we added inclusion into the value. So up until when we look at our journey and we looked at prioritization and moving towards acceptance and moving towards adaptation, and now we're in this phase of integration, that the enterprise and the value and the positioning of our senior leaders in the organization. And I'll talk, mention a little bit about our leadership standards, which we hold managers accountable and responsible for D&I, and we measure that. That has all helped to move our journey forward and to support these programs that we know are impactful for retention of our talent, which is so critical. And it has taken each of those milestones that I've mentioned in getting to this integration has taken years to accomplish. And if it wasn't for the diversity and inclusion, that value and the commitment of our leadership in the organization and the work of the Corporate Diversity Council, we would have not been able to have such candid conversations in the month of July and host town hall meetings where employees are able to ask what is PNC doing about the racial equality? Where are we moving? There has been a tremendous amount of authentic dialogue that we were able to host across all markets and open that up to employees because of the framing and the groundwork that we have done. So just a tremendous amount of collaboration in terms of the journey. I think for us, that progression, as I said, it does take time. Some of the milestone or barriers have been, what is the impact? And I think when we think about the barriers, sometimes we refer to our mid-level part of the organization as the icy middle. There are mid-level managers who have a tremendous amount of work to accomplish. And then when you add on the importance of not only reaching results, but how you embrace diversity and inclusion and how you're growing talent in this organization is just as important as the result. There's some hesitancy to say, there's a lot on my plate. How do I do this? So we've been working very much in helping managers to identify and be accountable for being intentional, for embracing diversity, looking at the value of our differences, the perspective of others, the engagement. It's been, it's taken some time to do that. We started with unconscious bias training, micro behaviors. I heard earlier in the session, the micro behaviors training was also part of our journey to educate our mid-level managers who really shape the culture of our organization. They're very busy, but for us, we've got to integrate this work in their day-to-day life and teaching them how to do that and how to manage bias and why it's important. So we've been able to make strides, but it's been a journey. It's been a lot of work, but we've been able to move ahead. And I would be remiss if I didn't say the work of our Corporate Diversity Council, the work of our Chief Diversity Officer to support the constant moving forward of where we are as an organization. If we didn't have their leadership, we would not be here today. But really, really proud of the organization and the fact that we are really intentional in our next steps, and we really look to keep managers accountable and responsible for this work.
I think that's great. And what I hear is it takes every element of the organization to really make this work. So it's not just a tops down, it's not just a grassroots, but it's a combination of a lot of things that really go into making the journey what it is, what it's become, setting the stage as you go forward as well. Dr. Goode, as you're working with a variety of clients in this space in particular, are you seeing anything else? Like what's your reaction to what we've just said? I saw you go, whoa, when she said the word 90. So what are you seeing?
For Icarus Consulting, we have over 61 clients in every sector: government, higher ed, for-profit, nonprofit, privately owned, shareholder owned, regulated. We're seeing time won't allow for three. One, if I only had to talk about one. We have, I think people understand that diversity for a long time has been perceived that it's about counting people. You heard me say that inclusion now is about making sure people count. But we've got to go to this next level, which is equity. Somebody said earlier about justice. I don't even want to go there. I just want to stick with equity. And let me give you 3 examples. In some companies, like the ones I was in, utilities for an example, people in the regions, people in Valdosta, people in Tifton didn't have the same access as the people here in Atlanta to the CEO and senior execs. So when, I know for a fact that the people at headquarters we had to do extra things to make sure things were equitable, so that the people that were hundreds of miles from corporate that were keeping the lights on had equitable opportunity. You know, me, I get a chance to go to the cafeteria or whatever, and I could talk to the CFO. What about that person in Tifton? What about that person in Albany? They don't have that. That's equity. You got to be thinking and be intentional to make sure that that person has equitable access. Pay. Price. When are we going to get this pay equity fixed? Women still 78 cents, 79 cents for every dollar that a man performing a comparable job. Guys, that's bordering on criminal. When are we going to get back to old-fashioned HR 101 and do pay equity studies? Present that data to the senior leaders and say, we have got to have a plan to address this. What about most people's retirement and for especially for, I would say Gen Z, is not in home ownership. You can forget about Social Security or pensions. It's your company's 401k or the way that you share profits. Why is it that a recent study by McKinsey showed that Black people, Black employees, as compared to white employees, don't participate in 401k even when the match is extremely generous? There are companies giving 85 cents on every dollar that you invest, up to 6%. And as a Black person, you're not investing in your own retirement. The company can't just say, oh, well, that's their decision. I'm not having it. You have got to bring in the Merrills, the Fidelities, and say, guys, you're missing out on this opportunity. What can we do to up participation in 401k for Black people who need it the most? And so equity, we've got to be more intentional. We got to leadership has got to say, we've got a diverse workforce. We got an inclusive workplace, but is it equitable? Are the resources equitably, do people have equitable access? And then are the outcomes coming up with the same outcomes? And so that's what I'm helping clients do now. Guys, you don't have to write a fancy statement. I'm not asking you to go out and hold up a Black Lives Matter sign. Look inside your own organizations and start bringing about equity and sure, I know about COVID. I was in the C-suite at MAAHR. I know right now what the pandemic is doing to budgets. I know how tough it is. It is never too late, and it is never too tough to look inside and ask yourself the hard questions and then do the work. And if you say, well, we don't know how to do it, then call Icarus Consulting. We'll come help you.
Awesome. Thank you. You know, as I looked at the topic for today, it's about leaders and loyalty. And based on what I'm hearing, I believe that is something that PNC is driving. And so I just want to ask each of you kind of when we say that and this concept of mentorship and the work that you're doing in this space, what does that mean to you? So Cedric, I'll start with you, just leaders and loyalty as it relates to mentorship. So what comes to mind? What resonates with you?
Well, I think when I think of loyalty, I mean, loyalty is earned, right? It's not given. You have to earn loyalty. You have to continuously, do the work. My loyalty to the company, to PNC, has been reinforced over years, right? And in each step, particularly over the last few months, that was a pivotal point to where, loyalty kind of, we get loyalty scores. I'm in retail banking, and customers, where they range from what we consider to be detractors to passives to promoters, right? So I'm a promoter of PNC because the work has been done over a period of time, but it's taking a leader like my leader to really listen first and foremost, understand, what are the top priorities for me as a person, and how do we incorporate that vision with PNC's values, because our values should be very similar. And we should be able to align our values to really be able to bring my whole self to work and let that shine through my leadership abilities. So, loyalty to me is it takes time, it takes work, it takes effort, but it takes a whole lot of listening to as well, to, where your employees are, meeting them where they are, and collaborating with them to achieve common goals. And it's a conversation that we have a lot with our customers. We don't position things without really understanding what needs are and what's important to our customers. And it's the same approach, which I feel like for my customers, which are the team members I have the privilege of having a chance to work with. So, but the mentoring program, to connect mentoring to that, that is a framework within the D&I space here at PNC. That's a framework through our EBRGs to allow for those very authentic conversations and to create loyalty. It is truly a retention differentiator here at the bank for those who are involved and participate through our EBRGs. It really is where our values come to life. And it's tangible, you can feel it, and really it motivates me, and the whole point of loyalty is to really, so that you can refer others or promote it, right? It motivates me to really, speak about PNC, not through a 100 best place to do this and all that good stuff, but through a true Cedric speaking as a person. I'm not a paid spokesperson per se. I am paid, but I do this because, it's truly something that resonates with me, and I've seen it come to life. So hopefully that kind of gives you a perspective there.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. Chris, your thoughts. As I saw this topic, I just got really excited. And tell me, from your seat as the talent manager, just your thoughts about leadership and loyalty.
I've been very impressed by the types of conversations we've been having in the bank. I think, that we've gone to a whole different level in terms of how our leaders are communicating and listening around, all of the topics that are impacting us right now. When I joined the bank 3 years ago, I was very impressed by the opportunity to join a D&I council, and really the expectation that I would be taking a role in relation to topics of diversity, in relation to being able to understand my fellow employees. So it fits into that same, that same theme of having expectations, being able to really have the right kind of conversations. At PNC, we were talking earlier about the importance of a journey, and we put an emphasis around that is in relation to career development. Really, it's, each of us have our own career journey. It's going to be different for each of us. And we put an emphasis on being able to provide the tools, the resources, the networking opportunities, the ability to be included as part of what we provide as an organization, to be able to help people in their career development. So as I think about, all of the different pieces, and we've been talking about different components of it, they sort of all come together to help you in being able to understand what is the expectation of a leader within our organization, as well as being able to have the different resources and tools to be able to realize that. So that, that's how I think about it. It's not something that necessarily can point to one thing and say this makes the culture really a good culture for helping to promote leadership. But I think all those pieces really help contribute to it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would agree with you. And Denise, you said something earlier that I want to braid into and bring back and braid with something Dr. Goode said about just this equitable access. And you said that you have a mechanism, or you're holding leaders accountable for their part in promoting DEI. And so as you think about leaders and loyalty and just equitable access, tell me what resonates with you around those topics.
Yeah, I think first of all that, these things are very connected. When I think about loyalty, I think about employees who feel this sense of belonging, who are thriving professionally. And if they're thriving, they're loyal. They're taking more opportunities. If they're taking more opportunities on, they really naturally are developing and influencing others in the organization very organically. They're leaders. We're all leaders. So they do connect. What we do really well at PNC, whether it's in the talent space or the D&I space, it's really about this engagement and this growth mindset that we are all leaders and providing opportunities for them, anyone, to lead in the organization. If they want to be a part of an EBRG, a part of a council, we lay the foundation for them to help to individuals to spotlight their strengths and to encourage their career journey. And I think D&I, we talked about it. It's much larger. It's about how we bring all of this together and how it lands for an employee, and how we are able to take the differences and cultivate all of our differences to really expand the manager's responsibility of our, to grow that talent. So we work on many different platforms of how all of these come together, but they do all come together. I think what I wanted to reinforce is just the work of the lines of business councils and the ability that they have to create programs, speaking events, history and heritage programming, where they can dock in and really have the opportunity to interface with senior leaders. When you're getting that type of growth, you're more connected to the organization. You have a stronger sense of loyalty. The fact that, you will be moving is at a lower risk. And I think on another point with leadership and loyalty, there's multiple generations that we in D&I and in talent look to develop. And how do we grow and help the generations to communicate more effectively? That's another way that we look at diversity and inclusion. So how do our millennial generation feel that sense of growth, and their expectations of moving talent and moving through the organization are very different than a baby boomer. So how do we make sure that we're communicating and creating an understanding of the various generations in the workforce, so they're connecting, they're collaborating, and each feels that sense of belonging, and helping each other to network. So we really look at all kind of different, buttons and how these connect, but really at the end of the day, want to tell a story that's unified and really connects into leadership, to a growth mindset, to being able to say, PNC provides an opportunity for you to be yourself, to learn, your voice is heard, and you can create a career at PNC. So a lot of connections. I know I shared a lot of different programs, but holistically, we do look at these things to make sure it lands for employees in the right way.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I think to our group of folks who are in this virtual space too. When you think about non-diverse leaders and getting them to participate in the mentorship program or be part of an ERBG or sit in some of these councils that you mentioned, is it a hard ask? How do you encourage non-diverse people to join? Because I would think that in some things in my career I've heard, I can't possibly join that group because I'm not affiliated with that group, and that's, in my opinion, one of the furthest things from the truth. I think diversity of thought and experience is incredibly valuable. So is it a hard ask at PNC? And if so, what do you do to encourage non-diverse people to participate?
It is not a hard ask because we have the leadership standards in place. And then expectations, where I talked about the middle, the icy middle of our managers of 6,000 to 7,000 managers, and the expectation that we have as an organization to embrace our differences and to really help us to acknowledge the strengths and develop the best within each and every employee. I think where we're seeing some strength as an organization from our managers is you've got to have, you got to be agile, and you've got to be able to understand the differences from a cultural perspective. That's where our EBRGs come into play. The growth of our EBRGs has been just amazing. And if you're not part of that or taking advantage of that, I don't think that you're able to lead as effectively in the diverse workforce that we have. And there's been a lot of stronger responsibility or accountability or keeping managers held to that commitment. So they're looking for things to be a part of. And then what happens is there's this authentic kind of connection where, when you're able to really understand and look at things in a different way, understand how to better manage your bias, how to develop teams and ensure there's inclusivity in dialogues. They're understanding that you can reach results and you become even more innovative and maybe reach the results even quicker than you thought. So there is some, downside into the learning curve, I would say. But once managers make that connection, for us at PNC, there's more of, wow, this is something that we're held accountable to do. We're evaluated on. We even ask the employees annually to evaluate their managers on these behaviors, which is important. They get feedback. Feedback's so important. So with those checks and balances in place, it really is creating a stronger management team that really looks to seek different opinions, where years ago it wasn't that way. They look to recruit diverse talent because they understand the value that it brings. And by learning themselves, they're able to sustain that talent because they're building a solution. So those are just a few things.
Denise, I was going to just add, I'm just holding up our leadership standards cards that highlights as really it highlights 5 different leadership standards, but includes intentionally being one of the standards, being able to seek perspectives, champion diversity. Before joining PNC, much of my focus was around job design. Spent a lot of time in my career creating different types of competency models and different types of expectations. And oftentimes there would be a component specific to diversity, but was it something that was really being highlighted? Was it something that was being aligned to programs to support it? Was it being incorporated into how you look and hold leaders accountable? Not that we have it perfect, and not that we don't have a long way to go, but I think that this really does encourage that, and it forces you to think about it when you're going through your day-to-day work.
But hey, Chris.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, I would ask you guys to consider, and I would ask all organizations, is and put aside the movement that we're in, and let's go back to January, and because without that context, this won't make sense. But we've for years, people say, do any of this stuff you guys talking about really work? Diversity, equity, inclusion, justice. And so we've got to begin to help leaders look at some common sense metrics that even they can understand and see and understand whether or not things are actually working. 3 powerful metrics I would ask companies to do is use your own employee engagement survey data or or ask yourself, just ask a question. If I were to ask my employees, would you recommend this company to your best friend? How confident that I am that 65 to 75% would say, yeah, I strongly agree. I would do that. That's common sense. You know, if you don't have the data, what do you think? What do you think would be the result? And you know, if you say, well, I don't know. Well, then let's ask another question. If you asked your employees, you know, how many of you are willing to give up some of your discretionary time, going to the beach, spending time with the kids to help a teammate reach a goal? If you're not confident it's 65 to 75%, then why not? Why isn't it that? And if you say, Dr. Goode, that's still too soft. Okay, fine. Let me give you a hard one. Let me give you a hard data point. Look at who's leaving your company and when. And if millennials, women, and people of color are leaving within the first 24 months of being hired at a rate that's greater than white males, I would say to a CEO, I would say to, you know, Denise, I would say to Chris and Cedric, guys, what do y'all think is going on? And y'all would say, well, I don't know. I would say, then why don't we look? Why don't we try to find that? We'll find out. All I'm saying is it's great to, when you have all these activities and you've got high degree of employee involvement, but ultimately, what's your metric for, it's a rhetorical question, by the way. There has to be some common sense measurement of success that says, ultimately, here's what we believe would be our best common sense. And for every company, that metric needs to be different, right? For PNC, it's X. For somebody else, it's Y. But pick one that the people in retail can get behind, the people, you know, in banking or whatever pick something that everybody, that just makes sense, and you don't have to translate what it means. So just a thought that I'd ask you guys to consider.